all right. What's good? What's poppin'? You already know. As usual, welcome to my show. I am Amara Negra. Thank you so much for downloading and subscribing. Today, we're talking about harassment at the workplace. My guest, oh my God. First of all, she's Black. She's beautiful. She's a boss. She is well-educated, well-spoken. I just love having these type of guests because I feel like it's so empowering when we see other women that are strong and are empowering and educating and showing other women that we can be brave, we can be strong, not to be afraid. Today, my guest wrote a book and it's called "Staying in the Game: the Playbook for Beating Workplace Sexual Harassment." Welcome to the show, Adrienne Lawrence, my love. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, most definitely. First of all, I want to ask you what truly inspired you to not just go through the experience and not be a victim per se, but be the voice and do a book where women can feel inspired that and know that they're not by themselves in these type of situations.
Well, being an attorney, I knew the law in terms of sexual harassment, but it's completely different when you're actually in those situations and circumstances. So when I went looking for help after finding myself in a workplace sexual harassment situation and I'm fearing losing my job, and I go looking to books for answers,
Hmm.
all I was getting was essentially these memoirs from largely white women who I couldn't relate to that were just telling me their story, and then legal books. And so I wanted a book out there that would actually tell me what to do practically. What can
Hmm.
I do to keep my job, kind of preserve my income, my economic independence, and fight back against this? And so I ended up having to go out and write the book myself.
This is so crazy because I feel like I personally have experienced it. Like I said, I know many women that have. But why do you feel that women are so afraid to be open and express and say this is really what's happening in my job or in my environment, whatever the case may be?
In part because our society often will punish you for it. As we women often still get the, well, what were you wearing? What did you do? As opposed to that person is in the wrong and you deserve better. And so our society's still evolving to not do this whole you're lucky to be here to women in the workplace. And so until a lot of women realize that, they're not going to speak out because we've internalized a lot of that oppression ourselves. But I think when you're a boss, you're a strong woman, you worked for what you got, you've gone to school, you've done everything you needed to do. The last thing you want to be is in a situation where somebody's going to try to take that away from you simply because you're unwilling to, play the sexual prize for them.
Have you also heard this coming from the queer community, or have you heard any cases, which makes me, curious when it comes to men as well?
Yeah, big time. In my book, Staying in the Game, I address a lot of issues that impact the LGBTQIA plus community, in part because when we look at what sexual harassment is, it's really about subjugation. It's about the fact that you don't adhere to traditional gender norms, roles. And so the LGBTQ community, queer community, tends to find themselves the most at the receiving end. Also, because, like a lot of racial minorities, individuals of the queer community are essentially considered marginalized. So that will make you essentially put you in a position where people will see you as an easy target. And also the aspect of that of being hypersexualized. There are so many dynamics in our society that make it so that people are ultimately pushed out of the workplace, or they're put in situations in which they have to make these difficult decisions between their economic independence and essentially their dignity. And that's not all right.
Oh my God, I just love hearing your voice. First of all, not for nothing, can you guys go to my YouTube channel, exactly Amara, and check her out? She is so beautiful and I just love the way that she talks and she makes me feel so confident. Like I feel like if I were to be going through a situation right now, and I haven't even read the book yet, I really need a copy right now because it's important for me to be educated so like this I can help out other fellow females that are in the workplace that need of my assistance. So guys, most definitely go check out her book because there you can really get the whole 411. So here's another thing too, right? Like I feel like employees don't know the difference, between the sexual harassment. Like like, oh, it's just a joke. You know, when they be trying to make them jokes and you don't know the difference. You don't know if to laugh or feel like, did you just try me right now? How do you know the
Mhm.
difference? When do you know how to stop it? How do you stop it without feeling like, damn, I shouldn't have said that. That was too much. Because you do, even if you're at your workplace or even if it's your boss, you need to have
Mhm.
boundaries and let them know, listen, I came here to work. I came here to get my, do what I got to do. And here's
Mhm.
my boundary. Them type of jokes, that's what we ain't gonna do. So,
Mhm.
how do we know the difference between a joke and sexual harassment?
All right. So I like to say there ain't no jokes when it comes to my oppression or subjugation. Like that
Mm,
might be a giggle for you, but it don't work for me. And so when it's a problem, you trust your instincts. How do you feel? You have to listen to that still small voice inside. If it makes you uncomfortable, even for a hot minute, you got a problem. And the
mm,
important part is you need to nip it in the bud immediately because what that person is doing, as you've noted, is they're testing your boundaries. They're pushing you a little further. They're saying, how far can I get? Because the thing that a lot of people forget is that workplace sexual harassment, all that is like gender traditional role based bullying. And the person's essentially saying, in some way, you don't adhere to the traditional gender roles or norms. And so, what I'm going to do is try to put you in your place, try to get you to play small. And so,
mm.
that's what that person's doing. They're feeding a little bit off of you feeling uncomfortable. And so, the moment you feel uncomfortable, that is when you nip it in the bud. That's when you say, what's up? Because otherwise, the person will continue to do it and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It is not a one off, it is a behavior.
I think that sometimes a lot of women and a lot of men can be confused and not necessarily know exactly what sexual harassment is and just automatically assume that sexual harassment is just a physical action. Like, oh, they touched my butt, it's sexual harassment. Verbally, there's sexual harassment as well. Can you give us a couple of examples of what is considered sexual harassment?
All right. So you're absolutely right. Sexual harassment, it's what they call a misnomer. It really kind of misleads you because most people think it has to involve something sexual. That is not the case. It
Mm-hmm.
takes on a wide variety of different non sexual forms like hostile behavior, physical assaults, patronizing you, denying you information and access to it, sabotaging your work.
Mm.
Why? The real kind of thing behind sexual harassment is the motive. What is the channels this person is using? And for example, there are three types of sexual harassment:
Okay.
gender harassment, unwanted sexual attention, and sexual coercion. Gender harassment, that's like sexist remarks, behavior, gender based bullying. Those are like, putting up porn in the office, having conversations about someone's, nether
Private
regions,
parts or whatever.
teasing and those quote unquote jokes. And then that unwanted sexual attention. That's that inappropriate, offensive sexual advances, sexual assaults, touching, email, suggestive, uh, like coming on to you physically. And then that
Mhm.
sexual coercion. That's that, kind of forcing someone to say, hey, if you want to keep your job, maybe you'll give me a little head, or pressuring somebody for favors. And
Mhm.
so the thing is, a lot of people think it has to involve sex. It doesn't necessarily need to involve something sexual. Someone may mistreat you and it's gender based. And it's because as a woman, maybe you're a little too assertive or a little too independent, a little too confident. That would technically be considered sexual harassment because it's sex based harassment. You're being mistreated because maybe you don't conform to those traditional gender roles. So we got to keep this in mind because so many people think they've never experienced workplace sexual harassment. And let me tell you, as long as someone is threatened by your very existence or how you run your game, you've been at the receiving end of it. Or if for some reason maybe you don't fit those traditional gender roles, you're a dude out there who has a kid and goes on paternity leave, and the buddies in the workplace, decide to yuck, yuck, yuck and give you heat for it. That is sexual harassment. You got to know that these things are so much broader, not only because it impacts your legal rights in the event that you end up having to leave that workplace, but also because you need to know how to combat it.
That is so crazy. See, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people are just misinformed and don't
Yep.
know. Like, and then they're also afraid because I know in a lot of situations, I know a lot of people that are financially, let's say they work for a big corporation or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I've been sexually assaulted or I've been sexually harassed by my boss or whatever, but I financially don't have, I don't have the money to get an attorney to fight this big corporation or this person. I might as well just stay quiet and not say anything because what am I going to do? In those cases, if you're financially not necessarily prepared to get an attorney to fight for you, what should you do? How should you go about it?
All right. So that's also in part why I wrote my book, because being an attorney, I can tell you essentially how to build your case and make your case. Because the last thing you want is when you finally decide to stand up, sue, or you want to do something about it, you didn't preserve any evidence, you have no documents. It's completely in the territory of he said, she said. So my book tells you exactly what you need to do leading up so that you can get an attorney, because a lot of attorneys work on contingency fees. So that means you don't got to pay them nothing. They're just going to take maybe a third of whatever your recovery is. But you are best positioned to show up to an attorney if you are prepared. And because again, you don't want to be in that he said, she said territory where it's your word against them.
How does that happen though? Because a lot of times is that he say, she say, or I'm going to say it on the low. Hey, come to my office real quick. You know what I'm saying? Ooh, let me take that. Boom. Whatever the case may be. And then how do you say, unless you have a phone and you're recording, but then I've heard a lot of times, because this all comes out of ignorance because we don't know. Oh, you can't use that recording because that person didn't know that you were recording them or whatever. There's no cameras. How do I prove that you harassed me if nobody else is willing to testify or say anything at the workplace? Because ain't nobody trying to cast that heat. And then you just feel like you're left alone.
Yeah, girl, that is why I wrote my book, because I got all the tricks of the trade and all the ways in which you can do it to remove it from the he said, she said territory. There are ways to work around it so that you are airtight. So if you got to come back in a year, 2 years, whatever months, or even 10 years, as we've seen a lot in this Me Too movement, you will have documentation that really supports, it substantiates what you are saying. And there are ways in which these people out here who are harassed, I call them harass holes, when these harass holes come at you, there are ways in which you can get it documented. And my thickest chapter in here, and the book isn't that long at all, and I keep it very, easy to understand and read. My thickest chapter is called Keeping Receipts, because that's what it's about, keeping them receipts and how you can create receipts so you don't end up in that he said, she said territory. It's all about knowing how to be prepared. And something I'll also mention on this, where people might think that, because most people are it's an arrogance. They think, I'm not going to be sexually harassed. Believe me, you are. But also the great part about my book is that you can use any of these tactics and techniques to address any kind of bias. If you're in the workplace and someone's acting racist or whatnot, you know how to keep receipts now, so that now I have a strong case in the event that I have to leave. Because you have so many more options other than just suing. Like that, most people don't sue. What you can do, though, is get a lawyer, and maybe you get a real good severance. You got a great review leaving, so they can't be out there slandering your good name and all your hard work. Maybe you get a full year.
How many people is out there trying to get a review? Other people are here. First of all, we're in the middle of the pandemic. The people that's out here trying to get these coins. So they're like, ain't nobody trying to be like, oh, you know what? I want to leave because you sexually harassed me or whatever, but just give me a good review. No. Give me a good review and give me them coins. Yes or no?
No. Yeah, but you don't want people out in the street saying bad things about you. So if you get kind of that agreement in there so that they can't ruin your future when you go into other jobs, but get the coins too, without a doubt. But having somebody who can negotiate and you can get a good severance, walk away, that's where it's at. But it all will depend on what do you have to offer, because your word against their word, it ain't gonna hold up. So you have to be prepared to run. And also something that I think is really smart that my book teaches you as well, because men of color generally are accused of sexual harassment at higher rates, because men of color are generally subject to hypersexualization and stereotypes associated with sexual harassment. And thus, when you suffer false accusations that are based on essentially racist notions, you got to be prepared as well. And so my book tells you how to be prepared so that you don't end up in a situation where maybe you get fired because, some woman thought you were looking at her the wrong way. And then you have no recourse whatsoever. And that's following you the rest of your career. You have to be prepared.
Especially minorities. Mi gente Latina, mi gente morena, my Black people, my Latino people, indigenous people, all my minorities Not for nothing. Let me tell you something. Stop thinking this is a joke. And this goes for women as well. Let me tell you something, especially now that we're in 2022, where everybody's all about my bag, this, that, da, 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 whatever. With all due respect, peace and love to the universe. But we still live in a world where race is still an issue, right? So if you
Hmm.
have a boss that is Caucasian, for example, and you are black, dark skinned, and you see them looking at you some type of way, or you already know the intention because you'll be knowing. A lot of the times we
Hmm.
know what they're trying to do. You know when they're looking at you some type of, but you're trying to act like, oh no, let me. Don't play with it. Do not play with it because you don't know how that story can end.
Hmm.
It could be a love fairy tale where you guys, oh, the employee and the boss ended up together and they lived a happy ever after. Okay, great. But the possibilities that that's gonna happen, it ain't gonna happen all the time. And if you go out there and let's say you decide to date your boss, you decide to date whoever it is that, was flirting with you at your workplace or whatever, and things don't work out, things can go south real quick. You end up in a
Hmm.
space where now you feel they used me. No, they didn't necessarily use you. You chose to participate. Now you feel used, or now you feel abused, or now you feel whatever type of way. Just business and pleasure. I'm not a fan of mixing it. I don't think that you should. And that goes for everybody, especially we're all grown, we're adults for those that are. You know better. Now, here's something else that I do want to know. So, for those that still may not get it, when you say harassment at the workplace, what about if the harassment is happening outside of workplace? Like, let's say, this is my coworker or whatever. We see each other outside in the supermarket or any other place. Can they still? How does that work? Because I know that's like a very thin line. Like we work together, but the harassment didn't necessarily happen at the
Hmm.
workplace. Does that still count?
Okay, so what we want to do is separate legal conversation from kind of just behavioral sociological conversation. And so when we look
Okay.
just at sociology, yeah, workplace sexual harassment, that largely means that somebody in your professional world who you know
Okay.
professionally is
Hmm.
essentially trying to make you play small, minimizing you using gender, traditional roles, sex based, something of that nature. And so even if maybe you're out and you run into a mentor and that mentor decides to, give you a breast exam, that's still
Hmm.
workplace sexual harassment.
Yeah, because sometimes I've thought of those things. This happened to me. Like for example, I don't know, I've been at a show or a concert or whatever, and they've tried to holler at me. Popular words out here. But then we see each other somewhere else. It's not necessarily in that workspace, and you're
Hmm.
still harassing me. So I don't know if to consider this at the workplace. It's not at the workplace, but we work together. How does this work? Like,
Yeah.
you
No,
don't need
just think of
like.
it. If you got a professional relationship, because it's just like one of my colleagues hitting me up through a Twitter DM and coming on to me there. It's still the same. Because, especially now when you really think about it, because there are no real boundaries. We're not in traditional workspaces and offices and cubicles anymore. We are everywhere. We're virtual. So we have to expand that
Mm.
definition and realize that if you are in my professional sphere and maybe you are putting me down because I don't adhere to traditional gender norms, or you're trying to holla, then yeah, we got a problem.
Hey, that's such a valid point that you gave right now. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's so true. Now, with everything that has happened, everybody's working from home. Things have changed, but social media and these DMs and these emails and Snapchats and all these fake accounts,
Hmm.
that still counts, guys. Don't leave that out. That still counts as harassment. If they're sliding up in your DMs, sending you freaky pictures, or asking you for stuff, or talking to you some type of way, that still counts. Um, well, is there anything else that you feel that people really need to know that I might be missing out? Because this conversation can go on and on. I mean, I have so many questions, so many things in my mind, but what are some of the top three things that you feel that people really need to know about harassment?
Well, people need to know that it's not about sex. It's not about sex drive. You can get sex anywhere nowadays. You can get your sexual gratification on. It has nothing to do with that. This is about power. This is about preserving traditional gender roles, about preserving that sense of power structure, male dominance, who gets to call the shots, limit the opportunities for others. This is a form of bullying. And, because when we really think about it, the fact is that your position in the workforce and what you do, that'll impact your economic power. And the more economic power you have, it bolsters you in society, more things you can do. And the fact is that men have been the ones with the vast majority of economic power because they've been in the workforce and thus they could control our destinies. And so you have a lot of men out there who will sexually harass women to push them out of the workforce, sexually harass other men who don't fit that traditional gender role of what men traditionally should be. And they're doing that because they're trying to reinforce this traditional power structure that's kept men in power. And they cannot risk having essentially other men out there with just more equitable mindsets and who are treating all women fairly and actually, just doing right. And also, the second thing I think people need to bear in mind is that, they know that when I say they, I mean sociologists, scientists, people who study this know how to end sexual harassment. Your employer, your workplace, people know how to end it, how to prevent it. It's completely preventable. The fact is that they're not doing anything, maybe to fight it, because hey, we've got to remember that these companies, they're just small little microcosms, representations of the larger society. And our society uplifts white male patriarchy. And so, hey, it's one of the ways in which you can control, dominate, keep the power structures in place. So that's generally why it doesn't get addressed. But the good thing is, in knowing that there's a way you can fight it, you have all the answers. And that's what I did in putting them in my book. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
lastly, it's important to bear in mind again, it's not, I got to say this more than once, it's just not about sex. And generally, when it comes to women, the individuals who are targeted the most, I list out the various things that traits you might have that make you more likely to be targeted. Whether if you have a
I
boss
want to know.
mentality, yeah, if you essentially, if you're confident, if you're assertive, if you're independent as a woman, that's like a triad of things that essentially make you an easy target because these people want to put you in your place. If you're in a traditionally male career, area line of work, if you happen to be book smart, if you are a single lady, that can be a problem.
It is true though. I can definitely imagine that obviously if you have, a boss energy, if you're well educated, if they feel intimidated by you, if
Yep.
all these things can be reasons why they can be like you specifically, you're my target. But overall, don't think like, oh, well, I'm just like this simple nerdy that nobody's going to come for me. You don't know that. You
Yep.
don't know that. That's why you need to be prepared in every single aspect. And the most important part from everything that I've heard amongst many, good things is to have your receipts. You really need to have proof so it doesn't become a he say, she say. That's why you need to get her book. Where can they purchase your book? Is this one of many to come? Are you going to do like a part two, perhaps?
Yeah, it's after this whole pandemic passes, that's for sure. It's been a day. But staying in the game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, it's available everywhere books are sold. It's on sale at Amazon. I'm fortunate enough to have won three book awards. It's the thing is you're gonna find it.
Yes.
It's very chill. It's a lot chiller than I think a lot of people anticipated. And it's not one of those memoir books. It has really, fun and interesting stories in it, but it's largely I just keep it straight. I let you know what the score is, and I tell you what you need to do and give you examples on how to do it. And, again, it's a playbook. And I think it's essential. Well, I know it's essential for
Mhm.
anybody in the workplace who really doesn't want to play small, who wants to actually rise, because the thing is, you're always going to find somebody who is intimidated by you.
Most definitely, the most important thing to me, ladies, guys out there, is be prepared. No matter what, be prepared. Don't wait till something happens to you in order for you to want to go get the book and then, oh, I need to read about this now. Read
Yep.
it now. Be prepared now because you never know when that situation can come. And if you weren't prepared, it might be too late. You may have not saved your receipt. You may not have known the way that you were supposed to react towards that situation. Be prepared now. Don't wait till something happens. Don't be afraid. Find information. Don't feel like you're the only one because you're not. There's so many people out there trying to help a lot of women and a lot of men that are going through these situations. And the same thing happens for the queer community. I know that they go through it a lot as well, and they're afraid to use their voice because they already feel like the whole world is against them. They're going to be judged. Don't feel that way. With that being said, can you also give us your social media platform or where we can connect with you if we want to know more information or vibe with you, check you out?
Yeah, I got a lot to say. So I'm always on Twitter at Adrienne Law. And then also Instagram at Adrienne Lawrence. And I am a legal analyst for the Young Turks. So I am on their Rebel HQ channel, which is located on YouTube and Facebook.
Adrienne, thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was so important. I feel like I learned so much today, and I can't wait to get my copy because I want to read the book. I want to be prepared. And guys, go get your copy as well. This 2022, we need to be prepared. That's the word for this year. Be prepared. Don't wait. Be prepared so when the opportunity comes or whatever the case may be, you're ready. Thank you, everyone, for joining me one more time. As usual, remember to follow at Exactly Amara and My Cultura podcast on Instagram and on Twitter. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Thank you for rating us 5 stars. I'm so grateful for that. You can also check out this podcast on the YouTube channel. Search Exactly Amara, and you're going to find out all these amazing conversations. You can go over it and share with your friends as well. This has been a production of iHeart Radio's My Cultura Podcast Network. For more podcasts from iHeart, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite show. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Ciao.